The Charlie Kirk assassination is proving a wake-up call on many levels, and that includes provoking a more focused discussion in Washington about what we need to do to better protect our political leaders from the threat of political violence.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is All Things with Kim Strassel.
Welcome to All Things with Kim Strassel, where we are fortunate this week to have as our guest Wisconsin Congressman Bryan Steil, who is the head of the House Administration Committee, the body that essentially deals with the day-to-day operations of the House, including questions of security. Congressman Steil, thank you so much for joining us on this very pressing question of safety in this week.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So my understanding is that just this morning, Tuesday morning, you briefed House Republicans on the matter of security. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were relating to them?
Well, it's a conversation to make sure members know what programs are already available to them so that people are using the tools we already have. And then a conversation about making sure that funds are available, which the Speaker announced an additional $32 million inside the broader security package, which will also pick up the executive branch in the Supreme Court as well. And so there's a number of programs available for members, for staff, and their families to keep everyone safe, including the general public, and want to make sure that members are aware of the array of programs that are available to them.
Just to lay the groundwork and to give our viewers and listeners a little bit of sense about what is available and what the existing security environment is for members, because I think a lot of people would be surprised. A lot of Americans probably just automatically assume, for instance, that members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, are afforded the sort of level of security that the president gets, right? That you have Secret Service officers around you at all times. That, of course, is not the case. Talk a little bit about what they do have on a day-to-day basis.
Well, maybe we break it down in two ways. So one, there's Washington, D.C., when members of Congress are at work in a formal capacity here. And then security when they're at home, often doing important district work as well. On the U.S. Capitol side, the United States Capitol is actually incredibly unique when we compare that to other legislative bodies around the globe. The U.S. Capitol and the Capitol buildings are open, available to the public. Individuals can come in, meet with their elected representative, obviously going through more or less airport security. But the buildings are open and available and accessible. And so the challenge faced to the U.S. Capitol Police is unique and challenging, that we want to keep it both open and accessible, but also safe and secure, not only to elected leaders, but to staff, but also to the members of the public that visit here regularly. The second side of that is how do we make sure members are safe and secure when they're at home, often doing important district work or with their families. And so we have an array of options to make sure that members have their homes are secured, that they have availability for reimbursement to local law enforcement, as well as funds as needed for private security. So it's an array of packages to make sure that members are safe. But it is true when you look at the President of the United States of America, that level of full security is really only afforded to one person in the globe at any given time. Right now, that's President Trump.
The discussion over the last year or so, but particularly it ramped up this summer after the killing of that Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband. And you guys passed funds back then in July and set up, I'm not sure if you passed funds, but you set up a program back in July, a pilot program to increase some of the money that goes to what members have. Talk a little bit about what that pilot does and how that's been working.
Yeah, we reallocated existing funds. So it wasn't additional money, but it was reallocation. Okay. To say, can we provide additional flexibility so that the programs are working better for members, in particular in their home districts? And I think what we've seen from the feedback is providing that additional flexibility has been positive in providing kind of that additional layer of security that members feel is needed at different events in their home districts.
Just at a level of curiosity, I mean, we always talk, the two chambers are obviously distinct bodies, but have you been having in the House discussions with your Senate counterparts on uh, trying to coordinate more, have more interaction, maybe have a broader plan about how things work, especially on a Capitol Hill level?
Yeah, we actually meet quite regularly, both in formal structures like the United States Capitol Police Board meetings, as well as informal conversations. I just had one earlier today with my colleague Mark Wayne Mullin, senator from Oklahoma. And so there's an opportunity to both have that formally and informally. But here's the bottom line. I think all of us are looking to say, what are the best practices knowing the security environment that we find ourselves in? And so this isn't really the House versus the Senate or Dems versus Republicans. This is about saying, what are the best practices we can put in place? What is a good use of taxpayer dollars to be thoughtful on the total dollar amount that's being spent, and then implement those plans and then readjust and reanalyze as new and additional information arises.
Let's drill in a little bit to those two different pieces, security both in Washington and then security when members are back in their districts. There's obviously been a big focus ever since January 6th on the Capitol Police. I know that the outgoing head of the Capitol Police back in the spring gave some testimony talking about some restructuring that the Capitol Police had done. One of the items of which was to create a sort of central command center or unit, as it was, to better assess threats and have a more rapid response. Are members of Congress feeling as though that reorganization has been adequate, that the police are now at a level that they are capable of dealing with some of this, that they have the adequate resources? Where do things stand in that discussion vis-a-vis the Capitol Police?
I think there's been significant progress, but also room for improvement yet to go. And so we have seen the Threat Assessment Office and the review of threats that come in. The total volume of that, mind you, has ticked up significantly in recent years. And so as we are building the capacity, we're also seeing the demand increase at the same time. And so are we at a spot where everyone's satisfied? No, we're not. But we have made significant progress in building up that apparatus to deal with the threats that are made to members. And so it is a bit of a cat and mouse game. We're constantly making adjustments and revisions. The United States Capitol Police and the new chief of police who arrived recently has been working around the clock to put those security protocols in place.
One thing that the discussion has also been about, and this is now more focused on when members go home, when they're in their districts, when they're in their states. One of the things, for instance, that came up during the Butler assassination attempt was interaction between federal authorities and state and local officials. Was there enough communication there? Was everybody on the same page? And one thing that I noticed that the Capitol Police has been doing, and it's been touting it as another step forward, is apparently it's now signed more than 100 of what they call these mutual aid agreements with state and local law enforcement, in which the feds can rely a bit more on those local services to provide protection back in home states and jurisdictions, and to provide some logistical support and money for that. In return, they can call on state officials to come and help when we have big public events in Washington or there's an emergency. Is that been a good program? Does it have, what are the failings still? Was that a good approach? Is this what we need to be doing?
Well, it's an important piece of the puzzle. And so this is about putting an entire safety net in place, or a security net in place. And every piece of the puzzle has an important role to play. The mutual aid is the ability for U.S. Capitol Police to already have an agreement in place, and then to be able to call on those local resources as needed, again, as any given security threat would dictate. And so I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, but by no means is that unilaterally the solution. And so we're constantly reviewing and analyzing and working with Capitol Police and local law enforcement to kind of think through the best protocols and best practices to put in place, and then analyzing how they're playing out and making adjustments as we move.
So you gave this briefing this morning to Congress or House Republicans, and you mentioned that you talked to them, made them understand what the programs were, what were available. Do you have a feeling now that members of Congress in general are briefed enough, not only on ongoing general security threats, but specific security threats to them, and that they and their staff, which, as you would well know, sometimes there's a lot of very quick staff turnover, you're getting new faces in, that people are being trained up enough and aware, or does more need to happen? Does this need to become sort of a, if not a daily, but a much more routine aspect of what members of Congress do and train for every day?
Well, I think about this is about making kind of procedures in place where if there is staff turnover or new people arrive, that it continues on, that we don't see this being a single man or woman, holding the keys to the kingdom. That this is about a way that we kind of think, and about a way that we broadly address the scenario as we move forward. I think a lot of progress has been made in this regard. There's always room for improvements. There's also adjustments that we're making in real time. But I think the broader structure here is that it's a little more front of mind to members following a handful of horrific attacks, from the shooting of President Trump to the shooting and killing and assassination of Charlie Kirk, about how it's important to really be thinking about security in the context of doing the job. If done right, all right, you can do this quite safely. But we need to constantly be reviewing and analyzing the situation and making sure that members not only have the resources to be safe, but also feel safe as they're going about and doing their job. That's a really key aspect for our democracy, is that elected leaders are out and engaging with the individuals that they have an honor to represent.
Yeah, I want to dig into that kind of question too, about where all this might lead. But I'm actually curious, just you're talking about how members feel. I know you can't speak for all of your colleagues, but you can speak for yourself. How has this changed in your mind in recent years? How much more do you worry about this when you go out and decide to go walk in a local parade? How worried are you about that? Do you feel confident and safe when you go out and do your job these days?
Yeah, the world's a dangerous place. And so this is really not that different than somebody who wants to go out and have a beer in downtown Milwaukee or in Washington, D.C. Some of our nation's largest cities can be really difficult and dangerous places. That doesn't mean that it is always dangerous. It just means, security needs to be front of mind for a lot of Americans and a lot of our largest cities across the country, as well as some rural areas as well. And I think that's true a little bit for members of Congress or elected leaders across the country. I think it's just important that we're putting this front of mind, thinking about the security protocols that need to be put in place. But it shouldn't also be lost that this is a brand new phenomenon. I mean, these have been challenges and threats that we have seen in this country for decades. And this goes back into the late 60s, the assassination of RFK in, I think, June of 68, following the assassination of Martin Luther King. And so what we're seeing right now is a bit of a cultural challenge where the argument that fully needs to be defeated. There was an argument that speech was violence. And no, that's not true. Speech is speech. Violence is violence. And those that make that argument really lead to less speech and more violence. And so this hopefully is a turning point, as Charlie Kirk led the organization, but this is a turning point in our society to recognize that we need to move and pivot from this idea that it is in any way, shape, or form appropriate to respond to political speech with violent actions.
Is that something you're hearing your fellow members talk about too? Because there is a cultural challenge. And, one thing that I have seen put out there, I think I am in agreement with it, is that Americans and constituents often tend to take their cue from their elected leaders. And if they see their elected leaders engaging in, we all are in favor of free speech. But when sides are demonizing each other, suggesting that if they take over, they're going to result in tyranny and dictatorships and accusations of that sort, is that not overheated rhetoric? And could you not make the argument that one of the things members could do that would make the greatest investment in their own security is to actually tone things down a little bit?
Well, one view that you shared, right, is that society reflects Congress. Another is that Congress reflects society. And maybe both are true in some way, but I think in many ways, we have some cultural challenges right now that we need to address. I think if you go to many families' Thanksgiving tables, there's robust disagreements and arguments between uncles and nephews or aunts and nieces about policy issues of the day. That was also true in the late 60s, that family a generation and a half ago might have been having an aggressive debate about draft deferments or the Tet offensive. I think the biggest difference that we're seeing is 50 plus years ago, there was a limited number of news sources where people were receiving their information. So that uncle and nephew might have both watched Walter Cronkite the night before. Yeah. We have now entered an era as a society with a massive array of news sources. In many ways, that's a good thing. In many ways, that presents unique challenges. And so is some unvetted sources, is some individuals engaged in inappropriate rhetoric, that's challenging for individuals that are susceptible to those types of radicalized messages. And so I think it's broader than just elected leaders. I think we have a moment where we need to reflect a little bit more as a society about where we're at in dialogue. I think that takes place in workplaces across the countries, on college campuses, inside family homes, where people are struggling in their communication with each other. And I think social media plays a role in this, age plays a role in this, but I think all of us have our own responsibility to have a positive impact on how we navigate through this.
Does Congress have a role to play? I mean, look, this has kicked off an enormous discussion about social media and the toxic aspect of many quarters of social media. Is there a role for Congress to be playing in having a discussion about age verification, giving parents more control over what their children can see, if that's even possible? I know that this has been bouncing around Congress for a while. People are deeply concerned, and yet we haven't really seen anything come. Maybe there's nothing Congress can specifically do. What's your own view on this?
There's definitely going to need to be policy changes. I don't know that any one given level of government holds all the keys to the kingdom. So an example of this would be, I think cell phones should be banned in middle school, off the cuff, easy to do. It should be done, but not maybe at the federal level, but done either at this full state level or at your local school district. I think we should have that conversation about high schools as well, to be honest with you.
I'm with you.
So some states are taking those actions, some school districts are taking those actions. And I think what we're learning as a society is how to navigate social media. And so I'm of the view, as others have said, that it's a great time to set your phone down and reconnect on a personal level with those around you, both those that you love and sometimes those that you disagree with. And the more we do that, again, as a society, I think the better off we are. It's in many ways one of the reasons that I really admired Charlie Kirk. Is that he was willing to go in and to have in-person dialogue on a college campus, the exact place where you should go and challenge your thoughts and ideas with people that disagreed with him. And if we take one legacy of Charlie Kirk's life that I think we could really build on as a society is set your electrical equipment down, go out and engage with people, and be willing to engage not just with those you agree with and those that are close to you, but also be willing to engage into dialogue and be open to ideas from those that maybe disagree with us. And I think that will also not only strengthen society, but again, I think in many ways Congress reflects society, and we may benefit from that as well.
Yeah, and my only thing I would add to that is disagree on ideas, not demonize each other. Because look, I would hate to even be evaluated on some ideas I had when I was in high school or college. The whole point is that we can have ideas and change our minds on them, and that's why we debate and have discussions and learn. One more thing, I do want to ask you a little bit more about this question about Congress and its tradition of interaction, but one more on the actual security element here. I've been hearing a lot of members, and one of the concerns that they've actually had is that government as a whole isn't necessarily keeping up with the threat. You mentioned that those numbers have gone up extraordinarily. I went and looked. The Capitol Police reported that there were 9,400 threats made against members of Congress in last year. That's just a stunning number to think about. And one of the things I've heard members talking about is the need to evaluate new technology, new resources we have, and integrate that as part of the security protocol. I know that New York House Democrat Richie Torres is introducing legislation that would task the Department of Homeland Security, for instance, with studying the use of drones to scope out buildings and lines of sight to try to shut down some of these opportunities for distance shooters. How can high tech and how much of a discussion is there in Congress about trying to draw on some of these new innovations we have, whether they be drones or AI, biometrics, to maybe put that in as a security piece?
There's a lot of technology at play at the United States Capitol. I don't want to get into all the security aspects of what we're doing to keep the United States Capitol safe. But you can rest assured that there's a lot of technology at play, as there should be, to keep, again, not only elected leaders, but staff and members of the public that come and visit this institution safe on any given day. And so this is about constantly reevaluating, reanalyzing the security protocols that are in place, identifying best practices and ways that we can act smarter and in ways save money. And let's put all of these together at the same time. If I can go back to your comment on the number of threats, if we think about technology, it's also made it easier to communicate. And in many ways, that's one of the best things that we have. In one of the ways it's challenging, if you had to go back and pen out and handwrite a letter, it slows you down, and you might just not have put it in the mail the next day as you calm down. Then you can make a phone call, and now you can fire off a tweet or a Facebook post. And so the speed in which individuals are able to react, I think, is one of the challenges we see. Is the volume of threats has increased. That cooling down period that naturally occurred after you wrote a letter before the postman came to your house to take that letter and send it on its way, that's gone, and that's not coming back. That's a societal shift. But it does make the job of security professionals that much more difficult.
Yeah, I totally see that. Just to finish us off, because it's something that I worry about deeply, I loved that you began this conversation by talking about how our Congress is unique. It's one of these areas, as you say, you care about the security, but our members really want their constituents to be visiting, coming to seeing them, interacting them. It is a time-worn tradition as well that our members are out there in their communities. They're doing town halls, they're going in those public parades, they're touring local businesses. How worried are you that in wake of what happened to Charlie Kirk and these growing assassination attempts on the president elsewhere, that this is going to change in some way, and that we're going to lose that interactivity?
I'm actually confident that we're going to find ways to navigate and make sure that we don't lose that, because I do think it's such an essential piece of American democracy. Our democracy is quite unique when you compare it to others around the globe, with the access that's provided to elected leaders, which I am of the view is so absolutely essential, and one of the aspects that makes America great, but also makes us really effective to the needs of constituents. I was one of the members who held an in-person town hall in August. Sure, there was a handful of people who came and intentionally tried to disrupt the event, but all the more reason to go in to have those conversations with folks that disagree with us. There's a lot of policies that need to be put in place to big challenges that we face as a country. And if we stop talking to each other, if we stop this American experiment of looking for the best policies to implement, that will be to our own detriment.
Well, Congressman, we really want to thank you for all the work you're doing on this, for taking the time. By the way, we love the state of Wisconsin, so say hi for us. We also want to thank our listeners. If you like the show, you can hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at atkim@wsj.com.